We have an agenda before us. Can we get the mover and seconder for the agenda? Member Kigaba moves, and then second, Member Mdluli. Thank you very much. Are there any apologies?
Chair, we have an apology from Mr. Beasley, Chair, and Ms. Webster will be arriving late. She has a challenge engagement this morning. Those are the two only apologies I've received, Chair. I don't know if any other member received an apology.
Member Msezan?
Chair, there is still an apology from Honorable Tutu, but there should be some changes that should have been sent to the Speaker's office because they are changing her from this committee. I think she's overwhelmed with other commitments. So I don't know whether it has come to your attention that they are substituting her for another member as yet.
Okay.
But you still have apologized for that.
Not yet. We'll await that. Thank you very much. We note. Thank you very much. The purpose of the briefing is for the DTIC, IDC, and NEF to provide the committee with a detailed account of its incentive program, the sectors it has supported, the value of the investment facilitated, the ownership of the beneficiaries, and impact of this investment. Furthermore, to unpack the challenges and the lesson learned by the DTIC, IDC, and NEF while implementing this particular program. DDG, acting CEOs, acting DG, thank you very much for bringing the team. This is the follow-up work from our first interaction where we interacted with all the institutions, and then ultimately we then agreed that yes, there are these a lot of figures that are being bandied around for jobs, for investment, and then we also wanted to now properly interrogate, including who are these beneficiaries, where are they located, and so on and so on. So we're hoping that today's meeting will assist us to get to deal with these issues, so that we are quite clarified as the committee. We will allow you, acting DG, and the team over the next 2 hours, if you like, to take us through, because it's three almost programs that you are going to be presenting in a way. Welcome to all the members of the committee. I'm quite impressed by the attendance. At least we really are trying our best now to get as much members as possible to attend the committee. And lastly, thanks to all the members. I think the kind of work that you did yesterday to extend the kind of interaction that we have with the ministry. And I think I saw all of you had a field day. Only me was missing in action. When you're interacting with the minister, you really kept the department quite busy at DG. All members had, some question, and I was saying that the young member Mdluli nearly collapsed Parliament yesterday. He asked the question that that could not be answered on the immediate, and the whole Parliament saying, "No, answer the child, answer the child." So yeah, that's where we are. Over to you, acting DG. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning to you and to the honorable members. Chairperson, today we have a delegation, as you had indicated, consisting of the development finance institutions that report to the DTIC, that's IDC and NEF. The IDC is represented by the interim CEO, David Jarvis, and he's accompanied by Tsepo Budibe, and also David. Okay. Yes, for the two names, not the, sorry for that. For the two colleagues from the DTIC, from the IDC, David McLaw and Helen. Yes. And then from the NEF is also the interim CEO, Advocate Muzwamantu Daimani, and he is accompanied by Ms. Andile Mhlongo and Mr. Andile Stemela. From the DTIC, myself and acting DDG Susan Mangole and Ms. Vasha Haranath. We're coming to the committee today to give the committee an annual report of the work that we did in 2023-2024 as the Development Finance Institutions Group of the DTIC. We will present to the committee, and I think it should be before the end of this month, an incentive report that now delves into some of the transactions in detail and gives more color to what we will be presenting to yourselves today. It's a combined presentation that will be done by Susan Mangole sitting next to me, and the colleagues will then help with dealing with some of the questions that the members will surely have. So with that, Chair, and with your permission, I'm going to ask Susan to please take us through the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, DG, and good morning, Chairperson and honorable members. Like the DG has introduced, we have a combination of a report, what we call it an integrated industrial financing group, which consists of the DTIC incentive branch, the IDC, and the National Empowerment Fund. So in terms of the presentation outline, we've got the introduction to who we are, the overview in terms of the approvals, performance information, looking at the past 5 years, the overview of disbursement as per province, district, and townships, localization, exports, and how we are greening the economy. And then the other element, you're going to look at the key sectors. When we do the key sectors, we've picked up some of the few case studies. Because the portfolio is quite big, we could not fit all the clients. The DG has mentioned that we will provide a detailed list in terms of all the projects that we have actually supported. Then towards the end, Chair, is the challenges, because the presentation asks us to say what are the lessons learned and what were the challenges. The industrial financing group of the DTIC consists of the incentives, the IDC, and the NEF. We are coming together offering grants, loans, and equity. So the presentation will focus in some of the projects we would have co-funded. Then we're going to go deep into the performance of the 2023-2024, which is the upcoming integrated report that we are going to be presenting to Parliament. So the support that we are offering as the three institutions is through different stages. So it's pre-investment, which is what we call initial mentorship or training to capacitate the businesses, is then the financing, and then as well as the post-investment that includes the turnaround. So when you look at our theory of change as the industrial financing group, obviously we are dealing with the economy. We are at the part of the economy that we have to support enterprises with funding. Our situation is that accessing funding through traditional banking institutions for projects that they consider as risky. So we come in to de-risk those transactions. The aim is to support economic development projects that are viewed as risky but have significant potential to contribute to inclusive growth and transform the economy. Our inputs, we've got the budget. I think ourselves, the incentive branch, we are actually allocated the budget from National Treasury. The IDC and the NEF, they're currently not being funded as part of the national budget. So they are funded through partnership funds, equity, interest from loans, dividends from investment. Then we're also looking, we've got various guidelines or rules that govern how we actually how we support businesses. Our processes, we process applications and claims, we do market our financial support, we monitor compliance, and then we do post reporting, which include monitoring and evaluation and reporting on projects. Then the outcome that we're looking at is the new investment that are supported, job creation, targeting small businesses, women-owned, youth-owned, black-owned, and we are in underdeveloped regions to make sure that they access funding. So we do fund expansion of current businesses, new businesses that are created to increase local production and also increase export. All this we're doing to make sure that we reduce poverty through inclusive economic growth. So, Chairperson and members, when we look at the 5 years, and the 5 years start with the COVID year, so as you can see that because of COVID, our performance has been fluctuating. So in 2019-20, what we've seen in terms of approval, it was 17 billion for the group. However, in 2020-2021, we went down to about 10 billion, obviously, because most of the period we had the lockdown. And then 2021-2022, we picked up to 22 billion. I think this roughly, it was because of the economy started to pick up. Then 2022-2023, we were on 26 billion in terms of approval. And then 2023-24, there's a slight drop of about 23 billion. The disbursement as well, they follow the same trend, because as you can see, 2022-2023 is the year, both in approvals and disbursement, that we were actually higher. However, on the disbursement, compared to the approvals in 2023-2024, we are slightly higher, even though we're still lower than the year before. When we now zoom into the 2023-2024, we have approved as a group 590 projects to the value of 26 billion. That will be bringing 100 billion investment. So I think what we can see here is that the IDC, followed by the incentive branch and the NEF, they are the ones that are coming in that order, both in terms of investment attraction as well as the approved amount. And when you look at the disbursement, we have disbursed, like I said earlier, 24.8 billion to 780 enterprises, with the IDC disbursing 18.7 billion, the incentive branch disbursing 5.3 billion, the NEF disbursing over 800 million. So now when we look at the transformation part of where the money is going, the 24 billion was disbursed to support over about 100,000 jobs that are retained, and some of them are new. In terms of the transformation, 4 billion was disbursed to the SMMEs, women-owned business and youth-owned. And then 5.2 billion was disbursed to the black industrialists and black-owned businesses. When you look at the BEE levels of our disbursement, we've got 88% of businesses that are between level 1 and 4, 7% that are between level 5 and 7, and then 5% which is level 8. And then we have disbursed 9 billion of the amount to metros outside to district and municipalities outside the 5 metros. So normally what you'll see is that our traditional funding will be funding projects that are mainly in the bigger metro. I guess it's also because of accessibility of where these institutions are. But then over the past 3 years, what we looked at was that we need to go to all the districts. Then we have disbursed 9.7 billion to support labor absorbing sectors. Like I've mentioned, in terms of the metros, to support inclusive growth. We are currently in the in the 8 metros plus 43 district, which is an improvement. But I think what we want to see is to be in all 52 districts in South Africa. So the map here and the list shows where the projects are that we have supported. And then again, also, we are prioritizing supporting projects in townships. So we've supported over 500 projects in townships across South Africa, including through the Social Employment Fund. So the list on the right shows the townships that we have supported in all the provinces. When we look at the provincial spread of our disbursement, for this particular 23-24, the biggest amount went to KwaZulu-Natal, which is at 10.6 billion, followed by Gauteng at 6.4 billion, and then we've got Eastern Cape at 2.1 billion, then we've got Northern Cape at 2 billion, and Western Cape at 2 billion. There are provinces that are still a bit low in terms of both disbursement and investment, and I think which also calls for us to put more effort to be able to then make sure that they also improve in terms of what you disperse. Because as you can see, it also follows the trend of the new jobs created in those provinces based on what has been dispersed. What we are also supporting and encouraging with projects, we encourage localization, especially because we need to replace imports. So in terms of our localization output, we have supported the companies that we disperse to. They've brought an additional 15.4 billion. Then with the black industrialists that achieve an output of 53.6 billion. And then through the film sector, we were able to have a 3.6 billion of local spend. Then when we look at the products that have been localized, it's within automotive and steel manufacturers. We are looking at cooling fan components, front shock modulars, and then some of the auto and the steel products. Then some of the products that are being manufactured by the black industrialists, looking at the industrial chemicals, we've got the industrial conveyors, we've got the transformers. So those are some of the projects produced by the black industrialists. Then also on the film, what we are encouraging is the local spend for the films that are actually being shot here. Now, because of we have to look at the companies that we are supporting, diversing their access to market. So we're looking at the manufacture, the export to the world, as well as export to Africa. So the projects that we have supported, mainly in manufacturing, they've actually exported 117 billion to the world, of which 10 billion was to Africa. Then in terms of the services that we have exported is 7.3 billion, of which 700 million was to Africa. So the map is demonstrating the African countries where most of the products, where we are sending our goods that we exported in the past financial year. Then the products that we're looking at mainly is the steel and metal fabrication, rubber and plastic, automotive industry. They actually contributed the highest of export to African countries. And then when we look at the projects that we supported for greening the environment, what we call green industrialization project, we've got the solar plants that we supported, the energy storage, the fuel cells, as well as the wind farms. Then in terms of natural resource conservation, we have actually supported the development of low graphene coated nano fibro membranes for drinking water. And then we've also supported the projects for recycling, because I think what is actually coming through, even though the amount is lower in terms of what we dispersed, we are also working with most of the clients to be able to support more projects in greening the economy. Then now when we look at the key sectors where the money went, the very first one, the disbursement, 41% went to manufacturing, 27% went to agriculture, 7% went to the electricity, gas and steam projects, 5% went to industrial infrastructure, 1% went to mining, and then 1% went to retail. Then on the services, we've got 5% that was dispersed to the film and TV sector. We've got 2% that was dispersed for the global business services and 1% to support innovation. So now when we zoom in the sectors in detail, manufacturing, we have dispersed to 330 projects. We've dispersed 10 billion, of which they have reported 67,000 jobs. So those are the jobs that are being retained, but then created, of those 67, 14,000 were new jobs. Then when you look at the additional local output, what we call the import replacement is to the value of 15.4 billion, and then with export amounting to 117 billion, of which 10 billion went to Africa. And then in terms of disbursement under manufacturing, 24% of the 10 billion went to black-owned manufacturers, 21% went to the SMMEs, 6% went to women-owned, and 3% to youth-owned enterprises. And then this is where the manufacturing projects that we have supported are located. They are located in all the provinces, including the district outside the main metro. Now, Chair, what we look at is that what we got in terms of the manufacturing sectors, in terms of the jobs and investment. So this takes us through a sector, the manufacturing subsectors where we have actually disbursed the money. So in the 23-24, we have disbursed 2.9 billion to automotive, which is then the highest compared to the others, then followed by 296, which is rubber and plastics, and then we have wood, paper and paper products, 190, then followed by agro-processing. So similarly, the investment from these sectors follow the same trend of what we are actually, what we have disbursed to. Then again, also we look at the jobs. Most of the jobs we got from the auto sector, and I think one of the key things is that what we are also tracing is in terms of where are they exporting. In terms of the export number, automotive is the one that is leading the manufacturing group. Similarly, also in terms of bringing new jobs. And again, also, these are some of the products that have been exported. For agro-processing is beef products, food and beverages. And then for automotive is light motor vehicle, buggies, SUV, and some of the component. For chemicals is paint coating, fertilizers, and then clothing and textile is the clothing products. Machinery and equipment, we've got conveyor, safety and control equipment, cranes, earth-moving equipment that have been exported. For rubber and plastics, we've got pipes and plastic packaging. Steel and metal fabrication is aluminium alloy. Then wood, paper is diapers. So these are some of the products that have been produced in South Africa, then exported to the world and Africa. One of the key things that is facing manufacturing in the next 5 years, it will be the digital transformation. Because what we are seeing now is that most of the companies are actually automating. They are also adopting artificial intelligence. So for us, what it says is that as they automate for the next 5 years, how do we then make sure that they still maintain their jobs and create value? So over the next 5 years, for this particular sector, what we're going to be focusing on is to be funding value-adding, beneficiating of minerals, low energy and high-tech manufacturing projects. So what we are working on now, we're working on the transition to the new electrical vehicle, also looking at what are the components that we're going to be localizing and what are the key industries that are coming through for manufacturing. Chair, we have picked up some of the case studies. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but it was also to give some of the examples of projects that have benefited for the 2023-2024 as per the request of the committee. So we have a couple of them that we have actually dispersed, including to Photo Motor Company. Then we have Global Wheel, which was supported by NEF under the automotive sector for wheels and rims. Then we have the Tequini Wire and Fasteners. It's also under automotive. They do exhaust mounting and exhaust mounting hanger brackets. Then we have Dika Plastic, which was funded under the Black Industrialist. It's plastic pipes. Then we have Rocky Brands. They do cleaning products supported by IDC. And then we also have the clothing and textile, which was supported by the NEF, Itera Trading and Investment. We have Concrete Hub, which is located in Limpopo, manufacturing bricks supported by the IDC. We have the Mandini Group, which they are in recycling supported by NEF. We have another black industrialist in waste wand in the recycling of plastics. And then these are some of the case studies when we engage with employees of these companies just to understand how they benefited. Then we've got the Erwin, which was supported by NEF under steel and metal fabrication. Then we've got Mohlalifi Engineering, steel and metal fabrication, manufacturing mining products. We've got the new one, which is still need to locate in South Africa, Stellantis Automotive, which was approved by IDC. It will be at the Kucha SCZ. Then we, under agriculture also, we have actually disbursed 6.7 billion to 40 agribusiness projects. Some of the case studies we've got the first one, which is Bel Air, which is an IDC client that they are doing medicinal cannabis. They are in Eastern Cape. Then we have KMF Holding. They are in meat, protein, and maize sunflower, also supported by IDC. Then we have the chickens one in Limpopo, North Roast, which also supported by IDC. And then we also have Roadgrass, which is also the poultry and chicken. They are doing the chickens. They are supported by IDC in Limpopo. And then the energy one, the one I've mentioned earlier on, under the energy sector, we have dispersed 1.6 billion to 18 projects. That these projects that we have supported, they will add 1,521 megawatts of new generation capacity to the grid. And then they have reported 2,000 jobs and invested 7 billion. Some of the projects that are coming through are actually located in Northern Cape. I think this one is the one that does the solar photovoltaic plants in Kenrad. So it's a solar plant that is currently operational and focusing on low carbon energy project. And then we have BP Energy. BP Energy partnered with Into Food Group for a renewable energy and wastewater services. They are located here in the Western Cape. Then we have Pellegrin. Pellegrin is one of the black industrialists under the renewable energy. They are also one of the projects that we have actually supported. They are actually supporting over 2,000 jobs. Then we have the next one, which is also in the Northern Cape, Redstone. Redstone also is going to be creating 73 new jobs. They are in renewable energy. Then the other part, Chair, that we support infrastructure. The infrastructure that we support critical infrastructure to unlock economic activities. That's a first. We also support the industrial parks infrastructure for refurbishment. We also support the top structure infrastructure for the special economic zone. For 2023-2024, we have disbursed 1.2 billion to 27 infrastructure projects, of which the investment that was unlocked is 11 billion. So but what we are tracking on the infrastructure project, we're also tracking the construction jobs that are created during construction of those projects. For the past year, they've reported to have created 1,300 construction jobs. So 76 of the funding went to bulk infrastructure, such as fuel storage facility, water and road infrastructure, then top structure for the investors that are locating in the special economic zones. These are some of the industrial park projects that we have refurbished since 2016-2017. I think starting from 2016-2017, that's when we started with phase 1 of refurbishment of the industrial park. I know that when the special economic zone presentation was done, they actually went into detail in terms of the which industrial parks have been refurbished. So far, we have spent 695 million to 14 industrial parks since 2016-2017. So that covers in some of them phase 1 and 2. Some of them are still in the phase 1 of the refurbishment. These are some of the examples of the industrial parks that we have supported. Utabelo in the Free State, Sisheru Industrial Park in Limpopo, Appington Industrial Park in Northern Cape, Middleburg Vineyard, we have supported it under the critical infrastructure to be able to assist them with bulk infrastructure that will enable them to be operational. So they are here in the Western Cape. And then we've got Ocean Mhlanga. Ocean Mhlanga as well, we actually supported them under the critical infrastructure program just to make sure that the project also it becomes it's got economic value to the citizen, but also to unlock other economic activities. That's where the critical infrastructure comes in. So for constructions, they're projecting that once they're done with construction, they'll be creating over 6,000 jobs. And then the next one is the Roslyn Automotive Hub. We also supported it under critical infrastructure just to make sure that they upgrade the bulk infrastructure and some of the key infrastructure. They are located in Roslyn, in Tshwane. They are mainly supported the auto sector, the auto companies that are located there by Roslyn, which is BMW, Nissan. So they are supporting that there's a hub where they've got some of the SMMEs locating there, but servicing the big OEMs. And then we've got uptown trading, which is supported through the NEF with the bulk infrastructure such as electrical contracting and construction. And then we've got Worthmore Concrete. Worthmore Concrete is also under supported by NEF. They are doing construction. For mining, we have disbursed for the past financial year 256 million to 9 projects operating in the mining industry. So the project is actually administered by the IDC in partnership with the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, which is called the Junior Mining Exploration Fund. So the aim of the fund is to assist qualifying enterprises to conduct exploration, to provide black junior miners with access to funding, to promote economic inclusion, to support equitable economic growth. When we look at how the performance went, 63% of the funds disbursed in 23-24 was for the copper zinc mining project in Pixley, Northern Cape. So this project, I think, when the IDC came in, is just to make sure that we reach to the district that are in deep rural areas. And then we've got Maduka Resources still under mining. It's mining operations supported by the NEF in Mpumalanga. It is also women and youth owned. And then we have NJM projects here in the Northern Cape as well. They're doing mining logistics, which is transportation services for mining commodities. For wholesale and retail, we have disbursed 164 million to 26 projects. The NEF, during the next year, they'll be looking at how do we position smaller retailers to induce demand for agriculture. That will also include to say, how do we then support SMMEs that are located in these big retailers to be able to be sustainable. And then one of the case studies is Mafuko Global under retail, which was supported by NEF. They are under the telecommunication sector. Then we have OL Family Pride Supermarket, also under retail. It is an energy service station in KwaZulu-Natal. The filament industry is one of the critical sector that we are also supporting. For 2023-2024, we have disbursed 978 million as a group to 42 film companies, which has reported to have created 4,000 jobs and then attracted 3.6 billion of investment, which was locally spent. Then when we look at the case studies of film, I think some of the series and some of the movies you'll be quite familiar with. I'm not going to go into detail. So that when you see them on Netflix, on TV, even on TV, you'll know that they've been supported through the DTIC. The first one is Blood and Water. The second one is Boy Kills the World. Boy Kills the World. Okay, the third one is Headspace. that's the one that you also supported. And then the next one is the How to Rain Christmas. I think How to Rain Christmas has been running in. So we have supported all the. And then Girl Taken, I think it was also on Netflix recently. We have also supported that. In number, both number 1 and number 2, both of them we have supported. I think this one, number 2, is still on Netflix. Then we've supported Jiva as well. And then we supported #LoveMySelfie. It's also running, I think, on Showmax as well. We've also supported the documentary for the life of Mandoza Galagata. We have supported the Umbrella Man, Escape from Robben Island. Under the Global Business Services, we have disbursed 555 million to 34 projects. That is supporting 33,000 jobs and attracted 7.3 of export revenue. What we are seeing in this sector is that besides us locating or attracting the operators from English-speaking countries, we are slowly into the non-English countries, which then shows as a potential that as South African, we can still do other languages besides English. So that's the trend that we are actually monitoring, because then it means that it's opening up for us to be able to attract more jobs. Then when you look at some of the services that are actually offered, it's your complex skills as well as some of the non-complex one, which will also include your financial and insurance. So obviously that means that as South African, we've got the skill set to be able to service other markets or other customers in other countries, even though we have 11 languages, but we are able to then adapt to that. When we look at some of the projects that we have supported, that we've disbursed to in the last financial year, the first one is Africa Talent by Deloitte, that has created work opportunities of 31 highly complex and 17 complex jobs. And then this is the group from Deloitte. And then the second one is Dash BPO. Dash BPO is servicing the US mainly. I think they also started recently to also service Canada. So they are one of the projects that we supported. And then the second one is MPC. MPC is located in KZN. They are actually servicing Japan, Spain, Russia. So these are some of the ones that are exploring some of the non-English speaking countries. This is the team from MPC that are currently servicing the global market. Under innovation, we've disbursed 97 million. If I recall, Chair, in one of the meeting, we were asked to say what is it that we are doing for the innovation and digital industry. How do we then support innovation and take them through? So we have disbursed 97 million to 50 SMMEs. The projects, because they are more innovation projects, they are actually a bit small, but because they're still at the prototype phase, so then when they graduate to then commercialization, that's when we see that they start to expand. We are administering this in partnership with the Department of Science and Innovation, as well as the CSIR and NRF. Some of the projects that we have supported, under research, we have supported a computation fluid dynamics software using unique multiphysics. Obviously, this is one of the projects that will then improve the storage solution for hydrogen and green energy. The projects that are currently in prototype phase is the multi-point remote locking system for use in cash management solution, obviously. So this one's, because it's still a prototype, once it's been commercialized, then we know it will also benefit the sector. Then we also have another prototype, which is the surveillance cameras using artificial intelligence to enhance safety. Another one, some of them are mainly some of the software development, which is the business analytics and the GIS information, collecting that information using drones. The projects that are under commercialization, we've got the data reporting platforms for data collection and mapping using drones and satelliting image. We've got the artificial intelligence to determine the optimal light output required for maximum cannabis yield. Then we've got the diagnostic platform allowing businesses to independently assess viability of business and providing insights. And then some of the projects that we are supporting for food security, the one that is under commercialization is the heat locker box, enabling cooking without electricity, fire or gas that can be used during blackouts in the rural area. This project is at the commercialization stage. Then we have the edible insect farming, which is a cheaper source of protein. The one under prototype on food security, we've got the ventless food fryer that automatically fries pre-packed or fresh meals in a healthier and cheaper way without the need for expensive ventilation infrastructure to remove odor. And then the ones under research is the low capital method to grow microalgae strains and develop food supplement rich in antioxidant. Then we've got the feasibility of establishing a commercial abalone ranching in the Eastern Cape, which is still under research. We've got a process to introduce pectin additives to food as a source of dietary fiber. Then we've got another research of using sorghum instead of maize as a grain feed for beef cattle. Then we also have some of the projects for the green economy that are currently in different stages of innovation. Then we also have some that are also in education. So, Chair, these are some of the projects that we support them to create a new industry and also to make sure that we get innovative entrepreneurs supported throughout. Then we are able to create some of the new sectors. Then these are in the health economy. Some of them is the complementary medicine derived from African plants, the skin and healthcare solution with healing and nourishing properties. The prototype includes the glove sensor system to assist the hearing impaired to communicate. Then we've got the knee prosthetic device that can track performance to assist in early detection of malfunctioning. So these are some of the projects that are currently in commercialization. The first one is the first case study is located in Gauteng. It was supported through the DTIC grant, so in the city of Joburg. And then the second one, it's also supported through the DTIC under the innovation program. So this is one of the case studies of the ones that have been completed past prototype, and they are now in the stage of being commercialized. And then the third one is the LOL Tech, supported by the IDC for mobile application development, working in partnership with the Department of Basic Education. And then we've got the Razimbilu Holdings, also under the innovation support. This is the one that is running the sensor gloves for sign language. Chair, I think now what we were asked by the committee was that what are the challenges and also what will be some of the things that as we go forward will be done differently. What we have seen in the past 2 years is that the fiscal constraints are very tight, obviously meaning that the cake is getting very small and we've got more businesses that require support. So the recommendation that we're looking at to address that is that we need to be able to have flexibility in terms of our approvals and have more partnerships within ourselves and other sitters to make sure that all of us we contribute. And then the other one is the issue of poor business plans by SMMEs and poor financial record. And I think that leads to mainly most of the projects being rejected. So we are currently working as a group to have sort of a single entry that will allow SMMEs that when they enter, then they enter to the same platform of industrial financing. But also, we are looking at amplifying the effort of the pre-investment support and use the digital technologies. And then the other one is the lack of adequate collateral, because incentives by their nature and some of the financial support still require the SMME contribution. So therefore, we're going to be looking at other ways of how we can reduce this collateral burden. And then also the other one is to crowd in private sector, because most of the projects can be funded by all stakeholders, not only through the DTIC, DFIs, but also tapping into other funds that are available in the private sector. One of those will also be the enterprise supplier development, to say, if we now track to say, who are they funding, how do we partner with them? We should be able to then increase the companies that we are supporting. And then there's also the issue of high default rates. And I guess also as we are coming from COVID and some of the economic challenges, most of the companies, they were defaulting. So what we're going to look at is to be able to we're going to strengthen our credit risk assessment and post-funding monitoring, so that we are able to proactively pick up that this particular SMME will actually default. And then the key one is also the high cost of capital. Even though the loans that are offered by the institution, they are concessionary, however, there are those components that still has to be dealing with the high interest rate. So we have started since the COVID fund and some of the responses blending the fund with the grants, just to make sure that it's highly concessional. And then the other one is the manual processing, obviously, which then affect the turnaround times. So, Chair and members of the committee, I'm going to pause here and hand back to the DG.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. So I think, Chair, one of the issues that we always have to deal with is to answer the question, why incentives? Why do we offer those incentives? I think at least in the committee, we are past that question. But when you look at all the projects as presented, they mainly fall into three categories. It is projects in areas and sectors where we need to defend the current economic activity. And that part of the basket has really been the larger part of the basket. And it's been because of about three reasons. One, we had a manufacturing sector that we had to protect during what was essentially an insecure supply of electricity. and they had to make sure that they continue to produce. And to do that, we have to support them to remain competitive. The second was around the issues of logistics. That then added other costs to it. And the third, which is becoming a big issue, is that in some of the key sectors, this fight with imports, not to say that our manufacturing sector can stand on its own against imports, but we know that in the countries where some of the imports come from, a lot of incentives are pumped in. So it essentially is unfair competition. So that's what the bulk of those projects represent, a defense posture towards the manufacturing sector. Then you will see it in the jobs as well, that you will see that we have supported maintaining of jobs that is not equally aligned to creating new jobs. So that was the scenario we were dealing with. Then the second class of transactions there are transactions that are meant to be new and to propel the economy forward. And those you see mainly coming out of some of the innovation work that is arising. It's all still early season to see a big jobs impact. Most of them still needs to go through commercialization. And in doing so, they actually need much more state support than what we ordinarily are arranged to provide. In many countries in the world, when you innovate at the back of understanding that you will get a contract from government, and you innovate with your counterparts in government, and it helps because you know that you've got offtake linked to that. And it is part of the reason why our innovation is leaving us, because we are unable to give people that assurance that once innovated, there will be a market for this product. And then in that whole transaction comes the financing institutions that before they even support that transaction, they want to make sure there's a market for it. And in most of the countries that are industrialized, government becomes the first one to provide that market. So as we're talking here about innovation support, the big thing that will be a new thing we will have to take forward is how government then positions itself differently beyond funding, but with market access in order to make the innovation landscape much more vibrant than what we have seen. Then I think the last part that I would want to add, and I'm sure members will also raise it, is that of course with an economy that has been growing at the pace our economy has been growing, we've had to manage very complex transactions because of the diminishing market. And some of the complaints that we are dealing with are just complexities. Sometimes they come out of the fact that there was an over-investment, over-capitalization based on market projections that didn't turn out. And sometimes our entrepreneurs then turn and do what entrepreneurs do. When you see that this part is not leading me to where I want to go, then they quickly do something else. Our PFMA says that before they do all that, they need to come to us, ask for permission, do all of those things. So even our own processes then inhibit the entrepreneurial action that you would ordinarily expect a business person to do. And I'm not talking here about corruption. The money is not stolen. Just took it to somewhere else. But somewhere else was not the approved place. And now we have to be dealing with that. So those are some of the complexities in some of our transactions that from time to time we have to deal with. And then I think I'll stop here, Chair, and just indicate that we keep looking, keep reassessing ourselves, and mindful that although from the performance that we have presented to you, it may seem to yourselves that we are saying we've done a good job. We know that as long as the unemployment rate is not ticking in the direction it needs to tick towards, we still have a whole lot more to do before we can get into that celebratory mode. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there anything perhaps the interim CEOs would like to add? We're still doing well with time. If there's anything.
Thank you, Chair, honourable members. Maybe just to also add on to what the DG has said, we are coming through from a hostile operating environment, and the DG mentioned issues such as logistics and load shedding, but we also know that the global environment hasn't been conducive also to investing. So that's why you also see a lot of defensive investments. The idea is always to only fund sustainable businesses, though, where they are distressed. So to keep them going, on the understanding that they will emerge out of the difficult trading conditions, and they'll be able to be sustainable businesses. And at the same time, to look for those opportunities, and we have been finding them. So they did come up in the presentation. We had some case studies. There are exciting investments. We've expanded, for example, a copper mine, which is going to lead to a lot of additional jobs, 1,000 jobs, which is one of the new minerals which is in high demand, despite the fact that the commodity cycle is down. The investment in Stellantis, so it's a very exciting investment with a global auto player, which is going to expand our auto sector. There's opportunities in battery minerals. We're still doing some exciting work, as you saw, in the agro and agro-processing sector. So it's about looking for those opportunities where we can partner with entrepreneurs who want to invest. We are watching. I mean, if you look at the South African economy, there are signs that it is, notwithstanding getting over these challenges which DG raised, we are seeing an uptick in demand and an uptick in business confidence, and that'll provide more opportunities for us to partner with businesses to improve our job creation figures. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Maybe just to add, one of the key issues that we think is working well, or is starting to work well, is the collaboration between us as the DTIC group in actually dealing with the challenges that we face. So we've been working closely with the incentives branch and the IDC in order to make sure that we actually stretch the resources that we have, and we also reach out particularly to the areas that were previously underserviced when it comes to these incentives. That's why in the presentation there is a lot of focus on investments outside of the main metros and also in the rural provinces, because we need to make sure that we support job creation in those areas. Because traditionally we've always focused in the cities. And also another area is the issue of ensuring, I think the colleagues have already mentioned this, the projects that we have to protect them. For instance, there are certain projects that a lot of money has been invested in, a lot of capex has been put in, and you will get a project, for example, that has got 100 jobs. You find that even if you invest less than 10 million rand, you can double the job numbers there. So the issue of job creation, we have to look at it at a number of ways. We can't always look at new enterprises, because the challenges that we are facing as a country are immediate. And we do also need to make sure that there are new entrants, and transformation is not left behind in what we do. So black economic empowerment and transformation has to be at the forefront, because I think as part of the country's priorities is transformational growth. So as we roll out these programs, we need to ensure that we continue with that transformation trajectory. I'll stop there, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There you have it, committee members. We can fairly elaborate and discuss now. We've got sufficient time. I think, DG, it would have been much nicer and easier if we had added the ECIC. Maybe this is just for future, because it will then give us a whole picture of the financial architecture and how we support different areas. I think this is just one area. Let me allow committee members to engage, and then we'll, as we do, I think we've got sufficient time today to answer. Member Msizan, number one. Yes, Member Train, and Member Olga, Member Tambo, and then Member Chance, Member Mgutu, Member Mdluli, Member Gigab, or Member Bester. Welcome. Today we are all here. We were short of just one member. Okay, in that order.
No, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Acting DG. If I captured the Chair correctly, I don't want to say the DG is acting when she's a DG. So I hope that I captured you correctly, Chair. I have 5 questions, but thank you very much for the well-crafted presentation. It's highly detailed. Thank you very much for that. So I have 5 questions here, Chair. So I'll just go straight to my first question. So my first question is, the report mentions significant job creation figures, which are hard to believe given the unemployment rate has been heightening in the country for the past 2 years. Can the DTIC, or the DTIC isn't present, but the IDC and NEF provide a breakdown of job rotation versus new jobs created per sector? Additionally, how does this job creation align with the initial projections, and what measures are in place to ensure that these jobs are sustainable beyond the funding period? My second question, I'll try to be slow, the acting DG and the department. My second question is, the report highlights substantial disbursements to projects outside of the major metros. Could you just clarify the criteria used to allocate funds across provinces, particularly to the historically underserved regions, and explain any imbalances with funding distribution? Thirdly, transformation as cited as a priority, with a focus on supporting Black-owned, youth-owned, and women-owned businesses. What specific challenges has the IDC faced in achieving these transformative goals, and how effective has the interventions been in overcoming these obstacles? I once came across a case most recently where a 100% owned Black company had been approved, so he alleges, funding incentive or a loan, I'm not certain, of a value of 166 million. He said that all stages had undergone of approval. Apparently, even alleges that they signed some papers or contract. On the 11th hour, in fact, I think I have a letter here, the reasons to then the withdrawal. Can I just read them out? Maybe I'll just finish you with it, I think, DG, after the meeting. But the reasons that are given, I just want to confirm that such reasons would be reasons to actually withdraw what he claims is an impactful program or business. Because the reasons that are highlighted here are 2 reasons. One reason is omission of critical information or provision of misleading information regarding availability of a technical partner. Of a technical partner to a project. And the second reason is omission of critical information or provision of misleading information regarding compensation of the technical partner. So those are the two reasons for which the incentive would have been withdrawn. So I just want to get a sense of if those are really valid reasons enough to withdraw what would have been approved, or if ever it was ever approved. And then finally, my last two questions. Please bear with me. Okay. Number 4, given the emphasis on green industrialization projects, can the IDC, or can rather the IDC furnish the committee with a detailed account of the environmental impact assessment conducted? Additionally, what accountability measures are in place to ensure that these projects deliver a genuine environmental benefits rather than merely meeting minimum compliance? And then my final question, Chair. The report mentions a baseline for measuring IFG's performance over the next 5 years. Can the DTI, well, the IDC and its partners outline the specific performance metrics and transparent reporting mechanisms that will be used to track progress and inform stakeholders of successes and shortcomings in real time? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Number 2. I think number 2 was Member Olga.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, just maybe 2 or 3 questions. I think the first question is, what was the capital loss? It was mentioned that obviously during the COVID period, a lot of the SMMEs or business ventures in which there was industrial financing given to struggled to survive or possibly even had to close. And so what was that? What did that look like in terms of amount of funding given versus the number of companies or businesses that actually shut down? And then secondly, with regards to the support given to our special industrial zones and your industrial parks, what kind of monitoring and evaluation is there to look at the effectiveness and tracking also the investment into the SEZs and your industrial parks? And I say this because we visited in the previous administration, I think it was an SEZ which was on the border between Mpumalanga and Gauteng, and there was argument about whether it was in Mpumalanga or Gauteng. Honorable Mbuyani, I think at the time, who came from Mpumalanga, himself was surprised. But it was also, I think, an SEZ that was really struggling because of numerous reasons. Theft, vandalism, challenges with your municipalities in terms of some of the infrastructure that they needed to supply. So how are you monitoring, evaluating, and supporting our SEZs and industrial parks and zones and so on? I think, DG, you've covered the aspect that I was going to raise. You know, you're looking at 590 enterprises or so that were given 26 billion and 184,000 jobs created. It pales in comparison to the bigger picture. And so I think that is certainly a picture that we need to turn around with regards to the huge unemployment problem that South Africa actually has. So I think it's something that we need to look at where are the low-hanging fruit where we can actually invest with a larger take of employment. And the truth is, I have a family member, and I was shocked when I heard this, who works a 5-day job, 5-day a week, for 2,000 rand. And she does that because she says, who's going to put food on my table if I don't take this particular job? And it got me thinking that to a large extent, we want to supply these, the jobs that are high paying and that's needed. But there are people who are prepared to take minimum wage, and particularly in that sector of minimum wage. How can we leverage, particularly with our huge unemployment problem, because our people, the people of South Africa, want to work. The vast majority want to work. And then, lastly, I had one of, let me put it this way, a black woman who came to me says that she came to the, where it was the NEF or the IDC, and she put forward a proposal. It was for the establishment of a mini industrial business idea that she had in the aluminium steel industry. And so she presented it, she says, to the officials within the sector, and they said to her, "We'll come back to you." And she says the next thing she knows is that that particular plant was, the business idea that she had was taken, and she saw it being established in one of the areas next to her. So how do we protect individuals like that? Now, this is the allegation. I can't tell you whether it's true or not, but I can imagine that it's a possibility. When somebody comes with a business plan, a business idea, and somebody steals it, how does that get prevented? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 3. Yes.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Mine is just going to be more on detail. So the first one being on slide 4, I saw the depiction of impact and the process. I understood how it works, but I would like to get more details on how do you do your marketing, like the marketing strategy, because I would like to believe that that is your sort of a system in place to your outreaches, to make sure that these services and these incentives are directly attracting industry, beneficiaries. And then the second one would be on disbursement gaps, right? So here, I would like to get more specific detail on, maybe rather to elaborate on specific factors that are contributing to persistent disbursement gaps across provinces and sectors. So furthermore on this, how do you then have these gaps, how do these gaps affect the project timelines? So particularly on the high priority one, I see that you're saying it's green industrialization, and you also refer high priority as the black industrial initiatives, right? So what would then be the immediate long-term strategies to close the gaps? And lastly, to have sort of a monitoring tool or a system to make sure that we know how to measure progress, right? So the last one, Chair, is on localization. So I get the sense that there is a promising outcome in localization and export growth, right? So could you provide then more detail on the specific measures taken to ensure sustained competitiveness of localized industries in the global markets? This is because I want to know, how does the incentive program address barriers such as economies of scale, technological adoption, and product quality to ensure that local manufacturers can meet international standards? So furthermore, what strategies then are in place to diversify South Africa's export markets beyond the current focus of Africa and Europe? And how will the strategies also then be monitored? And just a monitoring tool on that. I actually have more, Chair, but I'll pause there before, because I know.
Thank you. Member Tam.
Thank you, Chair.
and thank you for the presentation. I have a very brief question, and it's related, I think, to what was just recently asked, particularly when it relates to film and television. Like, how do you market access to those opportunities? Because I see a lot of the service companies that you cite here are owned by black females and black males, which I think is very commendable. And it's a sphere that is not getting enough attention. I think it's intertwined because I used to sit in the communications committee as well. There's a lot of lack of support for creatives in South Africa, and it's a contributing factor to the dwindling performance of the SABC, that they're not creating like interesting content. And I think it's tied to the lack of support. And the mere fact that even these shows, a lot of them are on Netflix or on streaming platforms, shows that there's not a monetary incentive for creatives to actually work with the public broadcaster. So I'm curious as to, firstly, how do you market the opportunities? When you give the incentives, is there another incentive perhaps for them to work with the public broadcaster so that we can try to create higher revenue mechanisms for the public broadcaster as well? And then thirdly, is there any specific criteria like for who gets funding within the film and television sector? So I can see that there's definitely an emphasis on gender and racial sort of emphasis on who gets the support as well. But perhaps if there is anything broader than that as well. But I'm curious, is there any, and also is there a relationship with after, like institutions which are centered on film and television and the arts as well? Is there a relationship with institutions of that nature? But the shows, I see the shows are primarily on private streaming services. So I'm curious as well on any incentive on working with the public broadcaster and creating content for the public broadcaster, because there's a link that I think needs to be developed there as well. Thank you, Chair.
Member Chance.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentations. I want to just start with some definitions and some foundations, because this is called the Industrial Financing Group, which has 3 entities. And that starts with the incentives branch, right? So I want to just talk a bit about what is an incentive. And if I just go to the Oxford definition, it says that incentive is a thing that motivates or encourages someone to do something. For example, give farmers an incentive to improve their land. Or it could be a payment or concession to stimulate greater output or investment, such as a tax incentive for investing in depressed areas. So the point about that is that it's intentional. It's not just random, and it's not piecemeal. It's designed to achieve a particular outcome. So my first question is, how is the incentives branch, as part of the Industrial Financing Group, part of the bigger strategy of IDC, of the DTIC? So, for example, how does it interrelate with the master plans? Where are those decisions taken in terms of where is the capital allocation? Now, obviously, in a capital scarce entity, which you are, capital allocation becomes a critical strategic decision. Where do you put your money? That relates both to the incentives aspects as well as to the financing aspects, because they're different. They may have, they may need to be, they're measured in different ways, of course, but that also comes to the point about where are the decisions made as to what happens within the branch, within the IDC and the NEF. If you look at the amounts of money that is spent, by far the majority is in the IDC, followed by the IB, followed by NEF, So where are those decisions taken? I want to understand what actually goes on in your heads when you sit together in a room. Do you look for things to finance? Do things come through the door? Obviously a bit of both. How do you decide what, in an average year, say, okay, well, this month we're going to allocate that amount, this month we're going to allocate that amount. What happens if something comes through the door that you run out of money for? What do you do with it? How many of these investments or beneficiaries have been knocking on the doors of the financial institutions and have been turned away and have come to you as the last resort. Are you the last resort source of funding? And if so, then of course it asks the question, how long do you hold on to the baby before the baby has to wean itself off the funding? Do you have measurements for that? Coming as I do from small business development 5 years ago and more, I then have to ask the question, where does SMME funding start and stop? Now, there's a lot of emphasis made in this presentation about SMME funding, but you're the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. We have a Department of Small Business Development, which has a now merged agency called the Small Enterprise Finance Development Agency, which is meant to be funding SMEs. So, again, is it a random exercise that somebody knocks on your door or their door? Who makes the decision? So it seems to me that there's some rationalization that needs to happen here. And in an era of capital scarcity, there needs to be a more focused decision-making at a ministerial level, at a cabinet level, as to where the money is spent and who it is spent on. Because otherwise, again, it just seems so random. Now, I know you have different focus areas. You've got green economy, you've got infrastructure, and so on, which is fine, but again, so do the other entities. So I just want to know at a government level, and it's maybe an unfair question because you're not sitting in cabinet, but at a government level it needs to be asked. At a cabinet level it needs to be asked, what are the priorities and where does the strategic direction land when it comes to the departments? I mean, for me, the fact that only 97 million rand has been spent on innovation is a real problem. As you know, we had a presentation from the Startup Act people. We've asked questions to the Deputy Minister about this. Surely in terms of the IB entity, startups and incentives must be really focused on, or at least incentives must be focused on identifying and supporting startups. And again, going back to the foundations of the IDC, the IDC was picking a small number of very big investments. ISCOR and obviously Sasol being two examples, and there were a few others. But now it's funding thousands of businesses. Now again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you're competing with the banks and the other financial institutions. So you're talking about blended finance. What is the blending going on here? If you take a particular investee, how is the blended finance actually looking like? Is it a bit from you and a bit from you and a bit from you? What are the terms of those investments? Now, if I were a listed company on the JSE, I would have to report every year my financials. Now, you are using public money to invest in businesses. Surely it would be reasonable to expect you to report on those individual investments at a company level, and for those companies to report on how they've used your money, actually our money, the taxpayers' money. So I'd like to know, why is it that at a company level these investments are not being reported? Because that enables us to measure the ROI, which again has got to be fundamentally the measure of performance. So is that something that you would be prepared or willing to consider? Something which is very strongly related to transformation is black ownership of formerly white-owned businesses. So, is there a branch, or is there an element within the branch that's looking at equity release of white-owned businesses to black investors? In other words, an incentive for a white business that doesn't have a succession plan to provide access to capital to that business, to the black business, to buy into that white-owned business. Equity transfer. There was a scheme introduced by the Tourism Department called the Tourism Equity Fund. You may know the one I'm referring to. Is that something that you would look at as a means of facilitating transformation and transfer of capital or of equity from white-owned businesses to small black-owned businesses. Then, if we look at the question that I raised in the question session yesterday in Parliament, there is quite an emphasis on high-paid jobs, and I was quite astonished to look at, I think it was slide 19 on your presentation, at the cost of jobs created. I mean, in the chemical sector, we're talking about several million rand. I think it was 8 million rand without actually, 8 million rand a job? That's a heck of a lot of money to spend on creating a job. Can we get a bit more information on why that is the case? And then the final question relates to, again, something that my colleague on the left was referring to was businesses that are not succeeding. You know, so I asked a written question which was answered. You may remember the question relating to beneficiaries of the IDC that in business rescue, and I think it was about 3.5 billion rands of assets, investments made by the IDC that are now in business rescue. About 6 of those are actual mini mills, which are using arc furnaces to melt down scrap metal and turn it into metal products. And this is a question which I don't want to go into in detail now, but I think it's an issue which relates strongly to your strategy of investing in the metals fabrication sector, and the support that this department is giving through various incentives and tariffs to one primary steel manufacturer and a few mini mills at the expense of the downstream industry, which is having to pay higher prices for their steel. So again, it comes back to the question of industrial strategy, and where does the incentives and investments, fit in to sustaining businesses that ultimately are not competitive. Why are they still in business? They wouldn't be in business without your support. That's all for now. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Member Mdluli, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I've been covered broadly by my colleagues that have asked questions before me, but I just want to have just some clarity on slide 9 on projects that are located in 8 of the metros and 43 municipalities. I'm planning to go to Umzinyati district municipality because that's my constituency, so I have a soft spot for that place. And I'd like to have an opportunity when I'm there to engage with these projects that are funded by this institution in that municipality. So if possible, you might not have to do it now, but maybe as days go on, please give me like a written a reply of these projects so I can just have a like a mini oversight on my own and engage with these entities or organizations that have received assistance from the organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Member Mputu.
Thank you very much, Chair. I won't be long, Chair. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
I just want to ask, Chair, on slide 17, there is information that says 24% was dispersed to black-owned manufacturers, 21% to SMMEs, 6% to women-owned, and 3% to youth-owned. The question that I want to ask, Chair, is this a question of youth not applying, or is it a question of them applying but not meeting the requirements? Or is it because there's completely no businesses of young people? I'm asking that question, Chair, because that 3%, in my own view, is really pathetic. It's a pathetic number. And I think that if we're really serious about job creation, but also about the integration of young people into the productive sectors of our economy, that number shows that we are not doing well. Understanding that the youth of, well, in terms of the population of South Africa, youth are in fact a majority, and youth are unemployed. And quite frankly, youth are the ones that are entrepreneurs, most of them. And they are taken to pillar to post from NYDA, from SITA, SIFA, and in fact, maybe let's ask again, what is that coordination? Because NYDA, I know that it funds to 100,000. So when a business then grows, what is that coordination in terms of growing with the business and providing that support until that business is sustainable, but also has expanded? Maybe let me ask that question as well. Is there that coordination, and what is that support between these entities in terms of that coordination? Of course, I'll always make the point that the 24% dispersed to black-owned manufacturers is pathetic as well. You see, I'm listening to the point that is being made of defending defense investment. Now, the danger with that defense investment is that we might as well be sustaining patterns of ownership, control and management in the economy that we've inherited from the apartheid colonial government. Now, so that one for me is a challenge. And we need then to look at new areas of investment where we can bring in and integrate those that have been in the margins of our economy. So as we do the defense, we've got to think very seriously about creating new areas of growth and development within those sectors that would reflect the demographics of our country. And also maybe even the issue of around equity, Chair. Not equity in the sense of bribery, as these BE deals are mostly done, that we are just a board person there wearing suits, but there's nothing productive that you are producing in the value chain. But really, real equity, productive equity. And I think that we've got to force, as we defend the investments, but also we've got to force them to open up their value chains so that they integrate more people. Again, the 6% as well, pathetic women. I think, again, the same question for me would arise as the one that I would have raised with youth. Just as a last comment, Chair, you see, this thing of funding districts or municipalities outside the metros is not a favor, and should not be understood as a favor, but also should not be understood just as in a simplistic way of creating jobs only. But again, it's part of the project of spatial transformation, because as you invest in those areas, you create nodes of economic growth. You are also transforming the spatial planning that we've inherited from the apartheid past, because the so-called rural districts and so on, when you invest in them in terms of infrastructure projects, you are changing the face of those towns, you are changing the face of those municipalities, but also you are creating economic value and stimulation so that we don't have to come to Joburg, we don't have to come to Cape Town to seek jobs. But because there are new opportunities, there are new nodes of economic growth and participation, we are able to ensure that the migration towards the urban centers is limit is we kind of work against it and we create value where people live, because part of the things is that also you are creating value for money, because part of what happens is that when we migrate, ushiya pha indlu kwenu eliqanda engu-8 rooms, uhambe uyohlala eflatini itoti yeflat, uboma le toti yeflat ubhatala 4,500 because ukhangela umsebenzi. But if lo msebenzi ubungawufumana closer to home, kwela qanda, and the quality of your life, because it means you must spend 4,500, you are left with 2,000 rands, for instance. So these are the things that we really start to really think about. Umntu ayosokola uzibone sowusokola ngapha township kodwa awusokoli. Xa usokola urent utoti ushiya iqanda elikhulu 8 room weqanda. Uthiwe abantu abamnyama bayasokola. Kanti awusokoli, phaa buyitya iketse uvube ngamasi uright, uxhela inkukhu kumandi kokwenu, but uyaphangela uyavuka kusasa. But because funeka uthutheke uye eGoli, uzibona ngoku nawe sobalwa ngabantu abasokolayo because ulandela umsebenzi. So zezi zinto funeke sizijonge, si-create imisebenzi apho abantu bakuthi bahlala khona. And investing in small businesses is doing exactly that. Uyayiva mzalwane wami? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Bester.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I'm going to first start by echoing, I think there was a comment that was made earlier by one of the colleagues about just the disconnect between when you hear the jobs that are being created as a result of some of these incentives, and when you look at the reality that we have. I mean, when you look at the QLFS report that came out yesterday, you, for instance, find we have a slight reduction in the unemployment rate as a start to 41.9% by the expanded definition, which is still high. And then you have an increase of 294,000 jobs. But when you look at where those jobs came from, 194,000 of those jobs came from community and social services. So they're not coming from industry. It means out of that 294,000 jobs, only 100,000 came from, commercial, the formal commercial sector. And even then, we don't know how much of that is from industry. So it's very little of these jobs that are coming from industry. And that is concerning. And I think we need to zoom in a little bit into that, into the fact that industry is not actually creating the number of jobs we see, despite the reports we have, and despite the number of jobs that we are being told are created. So that's the first comment. The second is around structural transformation, which is obviously one of the objectives of incentives programs. And what I'm wanting to find out is, how do you measure success in achieving structural transformation? What are the metrics? Because we can't always just look at, the demographics, which we were hearing now. You need to go beyond that. And you need to see if systemically things are changing. So what are the metrics that you use in order to be able to measure if there are systemic changes? And then my third question is around support mechanisms for SMMEs. And I would agree with Member Chance when it comes to the issue of the Department of Small Business Development. Some of what we're seeing and hearing here are issues that should be falling into the Department of Small Business Development and should be supported by the Department of Small Business Development. So my question is really about the cooperative governance and how these two departments are working together within the cluster. I mean, one of the recommendations you make, one of the learnings and recommendations that are in this presentation is to say that there are losses due to lack of access to market, and I'm quoting it, and due to lack of business support and cost of compliance for small businesses. Now, these are things which should easily be falling within the Department of Small Business Development. And so if you now have to look at, yeah, there's a challenge in this area, my question becomes, why is this not a challenge that the Department of Small Business Development is then taking when we're investing in businesses, when we're using funds to invest in businesses? Surely, with the existence of a department like that, those are issues that should be supported and taken care of by that department. You know, in that recommendation, you also speak about strengthening credit risk assessments. And I mean, those are the things that, you know, I would actually be against, because the point, and I mean, you mentioned the point right up front, the point of having these incentive programs is that an entity which would not traditionally be funded by a commercial bank needs to be able to be funded by these programs. And that is also how we are then dealing with the issues of apartheid legacy, etc. So if you're then strengthening that, to me, it seems like you're almost undoing the work that these programs should be doing. And so that is a comment that I'd want to give in terms of that credit risk assessment. If you strengthen that, you're then doing away with some of the benefits of the program for overall transformation. And then lastly, my question is about these programs and their continuation. I mean, I mentioned the QLFS report from yesterday. And what also came up from there is that we've almost doubled the number of people who are classified as being long-term unemployed over the past 10 years. But these programs exist and have been existing. And I know employment is only one, you know, of the outcomes that we're wanting to see from them, but it's a critical and important one. So how are these programs reviewed? I would ask as my questions. And what is the criteria for the continuation of the program? Because if we continue to do things for a long period of time, and we're not getting fully the outcomes that we want to see, why continue? Why not review and start to see what else works? So I'd like to know, what is the review process and what is the criteria for continuing with these programs, some of which have existed for as long as the department has existed? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Kidam.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you very much, Acting DG, and the whole delegation for the insightful and rather detailed presentation. Part of my difficulty, I think, well, not difficulty, but one of the things that we ordinarily have to do is to be skeptical about figures, so that we are able to interrogate them. It's not that we don't trust them or what you are saying, but we are interrogating the figures so that we are able to measure their impact. For example, yesterday, there was a response to a question which suggested that there is now, I think, 33 point something % black ownership of the economy in South Africa. But when you walk around in South Africa, you don't see that. So you obviously have to wonder, what is it that is being measured? If you look at just the sheer scale of poverty, of incapacity, of marginalization, you have to wonder. Now, the question I would have, therefore, is in terms of the amount of money spent by the Industrial Finance Group. Perhaps just looking at it alone, mindful of the fact that there are other institutions that play a similar role, both public and private. Do you also assess, from your point of view, the impact that the capital you spend to support industrialization, what impact it has on the structures, the systems, the relations of production and ownership of the economy? At least the entities at your disposal. I see the amount of investments undertaken, job opportunities created or jobs created. Now, if we take it a little bit further and look at what impact does it have on empowering the beneficiaries, to capacitate them to participate in boards beyond the entities that they would have created, the skills created for management, what impact does it have? Perhaps to ask this question, a related question, would be, are you able to assess or to influence the beneficiaries of this funding, to influence them, to influence their customers and suppliers, to also support transformation in their different sectors and value chains? So if, for example, you fund someone to supply fuel to ESCOM, would you also say to them that this funding we give you, say they supply fuel using trucks, that the suppliers of your trucks, of your wheels, those who maintain your trucks, who service them, and so on and so on and so on, also should be black women or black youth or black people? So that in that way, the person who's benefited from this transformation funding does not, after benefiting, reinforce the existing patterns by just simply staying away because they've got targets. Now, the sword cuts both ways in this regard. It's the person who's received the funding, but it's also the entity that has provided the contract, therefore that says, for example, we want so much amount of fuel within this time frame. And so the person sits and says, I've got no time. Since I'm chasing the targets, the contract sits in front of me as a behemoth. I've got no time to be thinking transformation. So are we able to leverage that the whole value chain, including the people to whom they supply their products, also understand the transformation objectives that are being pursued in this regard? The second question is with regard to the slide in front of us. It's a small question. Over what period was this? 1 year or over a 5-year period? so that one has a sense of, you see, what Honorable Mkutu was saying, 24% dispersed to black-owned manufacturers would seem small, would seem pathetic, to use his phrase, over a 5-year period. Over a 1-year period, it would seem understandable on condition, for example, that there was COVID, on condition that there was there was a proviso that actually led to this 3% disbursement to youth-owned enterprises. I mean, if you say, no, it was just over a 1-year period, there was COVID, then one would say, oh, okay, sure. But then what happened the following year and the year thereafter and perhaps the years before? But if you say this was 3% over 5 years, minus COVID, or some other big thing that would have caused disbursement to decline, then really, I think this is an underperformance. The slide says underperformance. But we're looking at a 10 billion rand disbursed over that period of time, and I'm sure there would have been much more over previous periods of time. And so what I'm trying to say is that the slide doesn't give us a sufficient understanding of what the scale, the extent, and impact of this disbursement over the period of time that is not mentioned here. Now, going further, it would seem to me that we've got ourselves into a tailspin with regard to austerity and constrained growth. It's now become a vicious cycle. And all of us, in as much as we may profess our dislike for it, but we have just simply succumbed to it and are no longer willing to take the risk and invest beyond what the balance sheet provides, beyond what the austerity constrains us to do. Because in an environment where the economy is not growing, so we've got to look at various levers that we can utilize in order to get the economy out of constrained growth. Either it's government expenditure, household consumption, private investment, or exports. So we've got to look at somewhere where we say, if we increase here, we'll get the economy to grow. I tend to be skeptical about relying on business confidence. We've lived through many periods where business confidence was high and there was no investment. We've lived through many periods where there was stability in the country and everybody was joyful, but no investment. It would seem to me that government has got to do more. Grab the bull by the horn and drive the investment in the economy so that we get it growing, so that we can have money in the pockets of people. And to think we're going to grow the economy using social grants is actually bad thinking. So how do we raise the, I understand the constraints. We're only talking about 3 entities here. On their own, they are not going to be able to inspire the type of growth we require, but they can play that role in their own sectors if they showed greater risk appetite and and we said to them, one of the priorities of the department is to drive industrialization. That being the case, this is the new role we want you to play. Have we spelled out to these entities what new role we want them to play in light of these priorities? And so say to them that either we increase your investment bucket, mindful also of the fact that people out there may not have the capacity to absorb the capital that you are willing to provide because of constraints in the economy. But have we provided a new role to these entities and said to them, increase your risk appetite, therefore we are helping you to increase your capital basket so that you are able to fund various enterprise development projects so that we get the economy going, we increase the numbers of jobs and. The last question, Chair, or two questions, Chair, relate to, or maybe the last question relates to, two. One is the NEF, because from what you were presenting, they have a lower disbursement ratio, which I suppose is because of lack of capital at their disposal. Are we thinking about that? Because I don't want to believe that the economy is constrained, therefore people don't have business plans. I believe people do have business ideas, do have business plans. They just don't have, either they don't have access to capital, or I don't know where to find the capital, or the capital itself is not there. So how are we addressing that? I'm deliberately raising this question because the committee has been talking about this quite frequently. And the final question, Chair, is, have we not reduced the role of the IDC in the South African economy? I don't think that the IDC that sits in front of us is the IDC that sat in front of South Africa in 1922, in the 1930s, in the 1940s. That was bold and ambitious. That was audacious, just plain audacious. I don't want to believe that it's the IDC itself that has minimized its role. I think that we, at leadership level, have minimized the role of the IDC and made it less audacious, perhaps risk-averse even. Because the IDC that supported the development of Sasol, that built Sasol, that supported the industrialization programs of Sasol, Eskom, ISCO, and so on, I don't think it's the one that is sitting in front of us. And I think what we are trying to say is that without big projects, this economy is not good. We're going to sit here and complain about constrained growth for another 15 years. We are so many years away from 2008. For another 15 years, we will be saying, no, the economy is constrained. We've got to shave. We've shaved our hair short of just removing the scalp itself. Unless we have audacity and are willing as the shareholder, because the shareholder, government is the only entity that has the opportunity to undertake risks of an unimaginable scale, so that the private sector also gets inspired by the risk appetite of government to also chip in. In the absence of that, all we will do is to sit here and say the economy is constrained, but, you know, if you resolve binding constraints, binding constraints are existing opportunities. The Durban container terminal is there. You're not building anything new. It's there. Rail export lines are there. You're not talking about building any new rail capacity. But what we are saying is that we need something big. We need something audacious that's just going to get the country excited. I don't think as yet we have an idea what that is. And I think it's something that both the IDC and the department and government as a whole need to think about and say, how do we get the country excited about what we need to do going forward? And you know, other countries beat us because we plan for decades. They plan a few days and then they start executing. No, not for us. No, for us, we will plan and plan and plan and plan and plan and revise our plans and come up with new plans before we implement the old ones. But the South African economy is in trouble. And the reason why it is not growing as it should is because of our own making. It's our own doing. It's not because the economy itself can't grow. This economy has far greater potential than we actually give it. Sorry, Chair, for long speech. Thank you.
No. It's important that members engage to the best of their ability, because we have actually spent the first 6 months just trying to fix our ideas what will constitute growth in South Africa. I think there is nothing wrong with that. So in the recommendations, we talk about the high cost of capital, and then we are saying it must be reduced. DDG, Susan, when is it being reduced, and can you explain that so that we are because it just can't be another discussion. You are saying here's a constraint and then here's a proposal, right? And then in the same breath, you're saying that the lack of collateral is an issue. We need to reduce this burden. And then what exactly are you going to do? So that we are specific and we can then come back and measure this thing, because that's what you've said. I'm just quoting 2 of many recommendations that you've made, having read the proposal. Now, we have been proposing a shelf space in dealing with retail. And then we're saying that if there is a possibility, because I've seen you finding retail, that we must put some conditions in this funding of localization and shelf space, so that people that produce products, if you are funding Pick n Pay or Woolies or whoever, there must be shelf space for them, for products that are produced locally. So we have been making this point quite emphatically. And then there is an issue that you are raising about the ITC tax exemption. Can you explain to us, and then what sort of measures have you engaged with SARS and National Treasury with regard to this proposal? And what underpins this thinking, so that at least as a committee we can appreciate where we are. So the DFIs is one part of funding, but we are responsible for the whole economy. I know that, I don't know whether between DTI and National Treasury there is some joint collaboration in terms of actually looking at the banks and their conduct. Because the banks, as we said, the committee made an observation here that they are very quick to fund consumption, but they don't fund. They come with every trick in the book not to fund businesses. But that conduct goes in scot-free. Nobody holds them accountable. So we would like to know from this talk whether or not there is any institutional thinking on how we can get into the space of ensuring that banks are held accountable for their action or inaction in as far as funding businesses and issues of transformation is concerned. Because at this point, no one is policing them. So we would like to put this matter very firmly with regard to the issues. The provincial governments, I just want to make, and I have no qualms about it, I'm just trying to demonstrate something to you. So a big announcement is being made that there is going to be a train between Gauteng and Limpopo, speed train. So if you understand Limpopo and Gauteng in terms of the economies, there are minerals there in Limpopo that needs to be moved to Durban, Mozambique, and everywhere else. Is that a priority? What do you do to guide, because we're not running a federal government, what do you do to guide all other levers of government about what Member Malus is saying? This, because that is supposed to be a big thing, but it must help us to propel the economy, not for labor movement. You know, between Limpopo and Gauteng is a 2-hour movement if you're looking for a job. Do we need a speed train for that? I'm just using it as an example, not that I have any issue with it. I'm just saying we are now thinking about South Africa and what will move our economy. Is that a priority? What is the extent of the involvement of national government to ensure, with not just with that and many other similar proposals that are out there, which have no bearing in the issues that we are dealing with. The last two issues before I come back to you, I think Member Bester says, and we've just also tried to check those facts, that if you look at the jobs that we have here from our reports and the jobs that are being reported there, it's chalk and cheese. They say in this quarter alone, it was just community services and community and social services. Manufacturing decreased by 20,000 jobs. Transport decreased, and. So we want to be together with South Africa. That's the point we have been making. And we've not been criticizing the department on anything. We're saying these numbers and these jobs, because if you look at it, just a shift of 1.4% is a very small number. It's not more than 500,000 jobs. So if these numbers were scaling them up on an annual basis, as we say in our reports, surely by this time we should have decreased unemployment at least by 3, 4, 5% at most, if the scale or the rate in which we are reporting these numbers were equivalent to what States SA is looking at. So we don't know where these jobs, we don't know where States SA is looking, and they're an authority. We have no say. We can't say no, but their numbers are wrong. Our numbers are right here. They are an authority of government in as far as these issues are concerned. Where is the relationship between these things? So we're raising this thing in that context. So we have been emphasizing on the issue of 2 areas that we must look at, the industrial and structural issues. And we've been emphasizing on issues of the ownership, management, and control patterns. So I hope, DTIC, when you come back with the BI report, you're going to break it down to us. Because for now, Sisboni geography, as Mbamkudu has been saying, that no, you've expanded in other areas. But who are these people in terms of demographics? Can we see them now? You say to us, okay, here for the past 5 years, in all the areas, including now the ECIC, we need to see what they're doing outside of the country, who they're supporting, and so on, because it's part and parcel of the financial sectors. So the last point is that when we say we are de-risking, and then we have these kind of recommendations, let's be firm with them, and let's see those things that we are saying here in the APP, so that it's not just another presentation. After a year, we all forget that you said we were going to do that in terms of defaulters rate. Someone has said, give us an assessment. Who's defaulting? How much amount? What are the reasons? Have we followed up? Or people just take the money and they run away to buy expensive cars and properties? We need to know so that we have a sense. Because this is public money, because it actually destabilizes you from funding other potential entrepreneurs who could be accessing this. So you've got I want to suggest that we take breaks, a tea break quickly for the next 15 minutes, and then when we come back, we then proceed, DDG, with answers. At least it will give you time to consult also with the colleagues. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Where is Andre? Thank you very much, colleagues. We will resume. DG and the team would like to give you at least the next 35 minutes, not more than that. We can push it to 40. There were just too many questions. So, and then if there's other things you think they must be in writing, we are also fine with that. And then we'll have the last 20 minutes just as an in-committee for to conclude our things so that we're out here by 1 o'clock. Over to you, DG.
No, thank you, Chair, and thank you to the members. I will just take the questions in the order that I had put them, but some of those questions were really, I think, part of the same line of inquiry. Maybe to start with yourself, Chairperson, and agree that perhaps in our next sitting we will bring ECIC on board. Of course, their role is slightly different. They are an insurer. But be that as it may, an important part of the work of providing affordable financing to exporters. And then you raised the issue of shelf space. What we didn't raise here in this presentation, because this presentation is also backward looking, and this will link again with the question that was raised by Honorable Gigaba on the numbers and the time frame. Those numbers of the 24% were for 1 year. Yes. So here, what we didn't indicate was some of the new projects that we are going to be embarking on. And the biggest of that is this aggregator model, where it actually, I think for the first time, the DTIC is going to touch local farmers and local producers in a way we've never done before, working with aggregators to take those products from them, let them focus on their farming, and let somebody sort out the marketing and the shelf space. And we're working with NEF on that one. I'm linking this also to the question that was raised on whether there has been a discussion with the entities on spelling out their role going forward. And Chair, they are here. They will indicate to you that they had a difficult 2 days in their strategic sessions, where we were actually plotting a way forward with them on the areas that will require change going forward. And I think some of it, you are going to see it coming fairly soon, where you will see IDC in transactions that traditionally, at least in the last 20 years, we haven't seen IDC playing in the rail space and various other spaces in the logistics sector, where IDC will also be asserting itself as the state is reconfiguring its own model on how to manage the different parts of the logistics sector. And we see IDC as an important role player in that, just as one example. And then there were questions that were raised by Honorable Mkutu, which were fair about the low participation rates that we were showing there, both for youth and for women. And the question was whether this low participation is a result of a lack of application. And the answer is actually it's both lack of application and also applications that we receive that may not be ready. Hence, you saw in the challenges slide, the colleagues were conceding that we need to actually amplify project preparation, especially for some of these projects that are owned by young people. They come with in some instances a lot of risks, and it's more clearly shown there. These issues of collateral and the difficult milestones that are put in to be able for a financier to say, okay, if my money is lost, I'll still be able to recoup. But what it does is that it does put a little bit of a hurdle. And that's the work that they have to, in this financial year, see how they resolve it. There is a scale among the financiers on where the small business agencies fall in and where the DTIC ordinarily plays in. But I'll ask the colleagues to talk to that. There was a time where I think it was 5 million or even a little higher. The DTIC will take it from there, and then anything below, it will go to the other entities. But even when you do that, then there becomes pressure to say how many people are going to come with projects of that much. So, yeah, we deal with the coordination issue. And when you streamline, then we deal with the issue that, no, but if that one can support, you can close the door. So it's a constant struggle that we have to work through. And again, if there is a good project, I think all funders in the private sector jump at it, and even within government, there are those that want to have a stake, because a good project is not its original size. A good project is actually its original size plus its potential for growth. So, but the colleagues can add more there. Chair, with the stats, we're dealing with 2 periods. We are reporting to the committee 2023-2024 ended in March. And the quarterly labor force is talking about something else. So we will always have that, but I think the judgment is whether at any one point the numbers that we are putting there, one way or the other, mirrors what is happening in the economy. And I think we've tried to do that with every presentation, subsequent to the presentation that the chair had picked up, that there was a number there that even on an annual basis, we couldn't defend. So we've just made sure that when we are recording a year, it's a year's number, not 2 years, not 3 years, and we make sure we are as clear as possible on the reporting period. So that will be the reason why members will see different numbers. And then Honorable Seate raises an important matter on how do we make sure people know that these things are there and there's access. I'm sure DDG Susan and the 2 interim CEOs will tell you about the work that we are doing, but every time you go into any township, you'll hear of somebody who doesn't know what we are doing. So this is an ongoing work and ongoing challenge that we have to find a way to address. IDC of late have been on the newspapers, and they've been in radios. I think one of them, Power FM, and a number of others. They've got special segments on these issues. But I know for sure when there are road shows, imbizos, there'll be somebody who just doesn't know. So I think there's also work we need to do, including in universities, so that when people don't get a job, it's not the end of life. They know that there is another portal. There's potentially a relationship we need to also strike with the banks, just because of the reach that they have, that some of our marketing collateral can be placed in the bank. So there has to be a way that we go and we go out and we reach communities where they are at, as opposed to modes that we have traditionally used. So I concede that there's a lot of work to be done there. These disbursement gaps actually are reflective of the application gaps. So provinces such as, no, not even provinces, let me say metros. Because when we say Gauteng, then everybody has a view that everybody in Gauteng is then equally included. No, specific metros in South Africa have a disproportionate representation of manufacturing activity, in some instances to the exclusion of others. And when we put our programs together, it's those that are most ready that will then take on those programs. The things that we are trying out now, this aggregator model, is to go into areas where ordinarily we wouldn't have gone and to try and access applications there. But IDC and also NEF will talk about also the work that they are doing in townships to try and get more out of townships, and increasingly we have to go into rural areas as well for the reasons that Honorable Mkutu has raised. On the film and television side, we work with a public broadcaster. The issue is that there's two things that we have to sort out. I mean, the one thing that all of us can say with confidence is that South Africans are very talented. Some of those movies, as the DDG was presenting, she wasn't actually acknowledging some of the awards that followed some of those. The problem is our producers move from movie to movie to movie to movie, not as owners of their products, but almost as workers in their own productions. Because when you give sometimes this marketing rights, say, to a Netflix, because of circumstances, sometimes they negotiate contracts that kind of make them lose the intellectual property which is actually theirs. And what happens is that those productions increase what they call the library of productions of Netflix, as opposed to increasing the library of productions of the owner. And all they have, it's on their CV, that. But in terms of marketing, further rights, and all of those, there are issues there. So that's what we are trying to work through, including with Netflix, because government can be involved in that project of increasing library for Netflix, and in a way perpetuating a cycle of poverty for the producers. So we are trying to get them, and a number of the American production houses to see whether we can have a strategy where we're not working on a production by production basis, but an agreement that actually allows producers who are the weaker persons in the negotiations to have much more power based on government funding. So that's where the issue is at. Some of the producers have an issue with the public broadcaster. So, and we have to give them the space to go and find a marketing platform that they believe will best showcase their work. But I think it's an ongoing struggle about payments and frequency of those, and issues linked to that does warrant that a discussion be had with the public broadcaster. There was one time when there was a view of 80% of local content, but it didn't quite work because of how it was implemented. But when you look at what South Africans are made to watch versus the talent that we have seen of South Africans, it really is not reflective of that. But is the public broadcaster willing to pay the producers for their work? we work with a number of entities. We work with producers across the world and also here in producer organizations. In our adjudication committee, we actually have the National Film and Video Foundation. We've got SABC is also part of it, so they've got even first rights to see what is coming up. So we do have those artists organizations. I saw members laughing when we were dealing with the names of the productions. We don't care too much about the name of the production. We care a lot about whether that production has feet or not. And then there are those that care for the content in terms of how it is rated, because government has to also be careful that we fund appropriately rated content. And then I'll leave the issue of capital loss. Honorable Thring raised it to the IDC and the NEF to deal with. Monitoring and evaluation of our SCZs, we do that. It's part of the funding agreements. SCZs tend to be able to maintain their infrastructure in a quality way much more than what our industrial parks, especially the struggling industrial parks, are able to. Honorable Thring is absolutely right, and I think Honorable Thring was talking about Incandastria, which has been a problem of this cross-border issues. We putting together a model of ownership of industrial parks, and we're hoping that it will kill that thing, where the industrial park is in a province that has actually no interest in the industrial park except it owns it, and therefore they don't maintain it, and what it is used for is a cash cow for their economic development agencies. So they just go there, get the rates, and then don't even sometimes pay the municipality, don't pay a lot of other people, and then that money goes to pay workers who are supposed to be appropriated in a different mechanism than that. So we're working on a model of ownership of industrial parks, which we think would help us to deal with that. Honorable Thring, you also raise an important issue, and I think also an ideological issue of people willing to work for the lowest pay. I think ideological in the sense that what would that mean for government? Yes, it will mean a lot of people are at work, but it will also not necessarily alleviate the burden of government to deal with certain aspects of those people's lives, because their money can't go further. But I think it was raised by Honorable Chance that in a review of the SCZs, we have to think about how some of those things can be brought in. It's a very difficult one for a child of a single mother to say, it's fine as long as they want work. And then government must subsidize that. So if it was a private sector entity doing that, fine. But government also subsidizing it without also making sure that the profit splits and all of that are reflective that there are people who are just sweating their lives without proper return. But we took the cue when Honorable Thring raised it, not Honorable Chance raised it, that we'll look at it. We'll have an open mind about it. But it is a difficult one, because it goes to the core of what actually are you solving for. Yeah. So then on the issue that Honorable Chance was raising, there is an absolute link between what you see coming out of the industrial financing side, master plans, and the direction that we are taking. When they designed the industrial financing instruments, there is a way that is actually approved in the department that ensures alignment with the priorities. There are other areas where, in a way, you have to support, or otherwise you will lose it. So what you do there is actually just deal with quality of funding to make sure the money goes to the right stuff, as opposed to, no, you move the funds from here to here. And one of those areas is the auto sector. Gives us the best quality jobs, gives us the best export revenue. But you take out that funding, we stand now the highest risk of losing all those jobs. And unless we've got an option, it is not an option for those people that are working there. So there's alignment there because there is an autos master plan that supports that. Honorable Gigaba said that we now are becoming victims of austerity measures, whether we like it or not. And yes, when it comes to how the rest of the master plans are going to be funded going forward, we're going to have to think very hard about how that is going to happen. Remember, we're not doing this in a value-neutral society. We're doing it against societies that have much bigger pockets. And we are sitting in the southernmost tip of the African continent, and we want to engage with the rest of the world. So there are a lot of things that looking at them may be working against us. But again, as Honorable Gigaba said, in all of those things, there are always opportunities. And that's what we are trying to get out of some of these transactions. And then there was a question that says, are you using this funding to actually leverage transformation across the supply chain and across anything that's related to the transaction? And the answer is yes. In the IDC, for example, you will never get funding if you're not a level 4. Just on the get-go, you can't. In the DTIC, there are incentive programs where you have to have a certain specific percentage of suppliers who are black in order for you to be able to access the funding. Why do we do it differently in different sectors? Because we are dealing with different challenges that we know persist in those sectors. And we want to be realistic about the potential and the current of the black suppliers that exist there. What is the beautiful thing that's emerging? We have a lot of black industrialists who themselves procure from other black industrialists. And in the last conference, we actually showcased a huge number of black industrialists that were making procurement commitments towards black industrialists. There was a question that was raised on the equity and equity transfer. I suppose for transformation it's very important, but for the economy, no additionality. Just to move hands from one owner to another doesn't on its own bring in economic additionality. Some of the problem with some of these equity transactions is that this is inheritance of sweated assets that have not been updated over time. So even when you take over those assets, in some instances it is better for you to start afresh. Because in instances, they would have bought machinery, it has a capacity of this much. Unless it's producing that much, it is messing you up on the fixed costs part. You're not going to be able to work it out. And now, latter machines are able to produce smaller quantities. They're able to produce with little energy. They're able to produce using little water. They're able to produce using much more updated processes than the old machines. So each transaction has to be assessed on its own merit. And the DFIs do equity, but I know that when they do those equity transactions, they have to look very carefully because they've been burnt, taking on what essentially looked like a good business, and it turns out to be a very difficult business to upgrade for profitability. Generally, people don't sell businesses that make money and that are doing well. they sell something because they are seeing something upfront. And that's the difficulty that in some of these transactions we are dealing with. Chair, I'm going to try and make sure everybody has an equal chance. So I will stop here and ask the interim CEO of the NEF to deal with some of the issues that were raised, followed by IDC, and then Susan, if there are any matters that I haven't handled. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, DG, and thank you, Chair. Maybe just to start on the issue of the jobs, there was a question that came to say, in terms of the transactions that were done during particularly the COVID years, what's been the success of those, what's the impact? So in our portfolio, what we've seen is that of all those projects we did during that period, about 40% of them, they have actually gone through what we call exits. In other words, they've fully paid the NEF funding, and those businesses have since graduated. That was another question as to when do you win businesses. So we work with the businesses. At some point, they pay us off, and then they would actually graduate. They would either go, maybe if they need expansion, to IDC, or they would go to commercial banks. And then about 45% of those businesses, they are still in our portfolio. They are performing. They have not reached their end of life, so they're still within the system. About 15% of them have actually failed, or they are in distressed situations. So that is on that one. And then maybe if I can take a related one as to the winning. What normally happens is that generally with projects, we fund them for a certain period of time. Some of them do go through extended tenures, or some of them will go through challenges where we'll do turnarounds. But in some of them, they would actually graduate. So we fund up to a certain limit, and then there are certain projects then that we would co-fund with the IDC. So the IDC will take over the projects when they now scale up, they go to big industrial stages. We're seeing a lot of projects that are actually going through that kind of processes. And then some of them then become commercially viable, and the banks are willing to take them. We've seen a number of our projects where the banks have actually refinanced them. There's a certain level of risk that the commercial funders are not prepared to take, that we have to take. That's part of our developmental mandate. And we see some projects being refinanced at very early stages, within a year or two. Once you've done the construction or setting up of a plant, then it does become appealing to other funders, and then they take over the funding of those projects. I fully agree, I think, with the point that was made by Honorable Mkutu about the impact of, she called it, we end up living to Idodi in Joburg. So that's, I think that was actually a good analogy. In fact, a lot of us here, I know from the DFIs, as soon as we finish here, we're going back to Johannesburg. And that's not where we originally from. So it's a real issue, and I think it does require us to increase the efforts that we are making in funding, particularly in the other provinces that are not necessarily economic hubs of the country. So we fully agree with that point, which is why we actually have targets. If you look in terms of our APP, for instance, our target is that at least 40% of what we do needs to be in those other provinces. It does look small, but if you look at what used to be happening, it used to be almost 90% being in the economic hubs. So it's something that we are working on. I think the DG has touched on the issue of the equity transfer. Another point I wanted to make there is that particularly when you do a transfer from white hands to black hands of a transaction, what we've seen, one of the reasons why those businesses tend to fail after those transactions is that you'll find that a lot of relationships were in the white hands. And as soon as you've done the transfer, if you don't have a mechanism for the previous owner to stay in the business, which most of the time they want to retire and they want to exit as soon as they receive. They're not prepared to wait for their money. So, and I think the DG made that point to say, we will do them, provided they are structured in certain way. One, we do need a period from the previous owner so that there can be a transfer of the skill and also of the relationships to the black entrepreneurs. And also, we will do it if it's expansionary. So there needs to be value add, because as we do transactions, we want to create jobs. We want to see expansion within the economy. And the issue of machinery, I won't repeat it, that the DG made is very important to us. Then maybe if I can touch on the issue of the green energy, because, but I just want to make one point there to say, for SMMEs in particular, the cost of electricity is a significant factor. And if they are able to blend their energy sources, it does bring a benefit. So we do assessments as to the benefits of the alternative energy sources in the businesses that we fund. And there are significant benefits that go beyond what is actually the impact on the, it's not only about load shedding. We've learned that even during this period where there is a steady supply of electricity, that they still benefit to ensuring that there is a certain level of green energy in the businesses that we are actually doing. Chair, I don't know, maybe I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the challenging questions and comments from honourable members. I can start by giving a commitment, Chair, that these are the exact issues that we grapple with as management and with our board and with the shareholder when we're looking at our APP, our corporate plan, the KPIs. These are exactly the questions we do grapple with. I've also asked my colleagues, there's a couple of areas of information which we'll provide written response to as per your direction, Chair, and I'll highlight those as well. So in terms of squaring the jobs between what we're reporting here and the Stats SA figures, it's the second time I've heard this issue come up, Chair, in this committee. So I do think it's something that we're grappling with, because there's an apples and oranges issue here. And what I'm going to request is that our research and information department put something together to just try and explain why what are we seeing in the Stats SA and what are we seeing where we report, and is there any disjunction, what could explain those differentiations. So that's one of our commitments. Most of these areas we'll get back in a week. That one might take a bit longer because it does require some work. In terms of Honourable Msizana's question around where the jobs are created and retained across the various sectors, we will provide that breakdown. I'm looking at it here. Some of the big areas are agriculture and food processing, where in 2024 we retained 26,000 jobs, created 1,200. Clothing and textiles retained close to 14,000, created 461. In basic metals, we created over 5,000 jobs. Electricity, gas, and water created close to 5,000 jobs, retained just over 1,000. So obviously a lot of new industry coming on stream. So you can see that the relationship between the performance of a sector also impacts on whether there's jobs being created in that sector versus jobs being retained. Also a high creator of jobs is in the film, TV, and recreational activities, close to 2,500. As opposed to retaining 3,000. So we'll give that breakdown, and it does make for interesting reading, especially if you take into context what's happening within those various sectors. We do also target, like colleagues have mentioned, projects outside of the key provinces, and there we'll often find the way that we will think about these investments is to find an anchor investment. So often it's renewable energy, especially outside of the core areas, renewable energy, mining activity, or an agricultural activity. The key then is to say, what are those anchor investments? What is the opportunity to grow ecosystems, economic ecosystems around them? So we have something called SMME Connect, where we connect small businesses in the areas so that not all of the services are imported from the larger, from Joburg to these other areas, whether it's construction or supplying, but are actually built within those areas, and thereby try and stimulate the local economy. It is also an area of partnership. We have invested heavily in the SEZs, so a lot of our investments do go into the SEZs, which are outside of the key economic areas and economic hubs. Chair, there was a question around, also from Honourable Msizane, about, what are the reasons for not supporting a transaction? And the example that was given was around misleading, and I don't know if it's ID whose client it is, but there was misleading information of around a technical partner. So when we do our risk assessment, and this also speaks to Honourable Webster's issue, the risk assessment would say the need for a technical partner, a credible technical partner who can support the growth of the business. How do you mitigate that? So a good risk assessment doesn't say what are risks we need to avoid. A good risk assessment says, how do we mitigate those risks to make this business work? So if you had a need for a technical partner, but misleading information or omission of information was there, it would be a serious challenge to complete that transaction and get an approval. It also speaks, if there was misleading information, to the credibility of the jockey, and we often find the sponsor, the credibility of the sponsor is one of the key success criteria for any project. So the moment that you have misleading information, it makes it challenging to proceed with that transaction. Again, there are ways to mitigate that risk. Do you have independent board members? Do you have a strong executive? Is it not like an executive chairperson, etc.? So we'd even look at mitigating those risks. Chair, again, there was a question around how we supporting the township economy. Again, I think this is something that we have a number of programs which we can provide something in writing on, giving a breakdown of the TPF, our energy resilience program, the various funds that we run to support township economies. Similar to what interim CEO of NEF was saying, COVID impacted certain sectors disproportionately. So, for example, in the tourism sector, we had to step in and support a lot of hospitality businesses on the understanding that this would be a temporary, that the pandemic wouldn't last forever. So we did restructure facilities. We came in with additional support mechanisms to support the businesses in tourism. And we've seen a massive turnaround in those companies. But we do have companies which continue to be affected by COVID, or they took a large knock during COVID that they haven't been able to recover from, and we're working with those business partners. And that speaks to, there's another question which was asked around from Honourable Siate, in terms of how do we ensure we sustain our competitiveness. So we have a very strong, we used to have what was called portfolio monitoring. A couple of questions were asked around this. So you do the transaction, the operating units do the transaction, get the approval, they hand it over to portfolio monitoring. We've totally changed that concept now. Now we call it client support and growth. And my colleague Helen is from that division. And there it's about saying what was the development impact that we wanted to see when we entered into this transaction. What are the kind of financial metrics we want to see from this business partner? And we develop value creation plans. We work with them on those value creation plans to grow their business. There was an issue around, and again, I don't know which institution it's from, and maybe Honourable Thuring, we can take it offline around a business that said their business idea had been stolen. It's not the first time we've heard of this, and we do investigate this. It's obviously, to us, it's a form of fraud, which we have zero tolerance for. So we do have a forensics team who investigates issues like this. I've personally come across one example where a sponsor did claim the idea had been stolen, but it was coincidence. It was in the same sector, received at the similar time, etc. But it's not the first time that we've heard these cases, and if we are made aware of them, we will investigate them fully. And like I said, we have zero tolerance for that type of behavior. The capital allocation, Honourable Chance, and how we determine the capital allocation. So we look at the opportunities within a sector. We look at the strategic objectives within a sector. And then we look at also what's potentially in our pipeline, and that's how we determine our capital allocation. And it is done, we do take into account, like Mzi was saying, we look at the different stage of the business, where should it be placed within which DFI. We also have sector differentials. We have transaction limits, which highlight the kind of areas we should be playing in versus other DFIs. There is some overlap. And there are also opportunities for co-financing. So we do a lot of co-financing with NEF, even with DBSA. If you think of the renewable energy program, ourselves and DBSA came in on those first, the REAP program. We came in on those first couple of rounds, de-risked the REAP so that the commercial funders saw opportunity there and came in. So where there is overlap, we look to coordinate our activities as well. We shouldn't be competing. We also, there was a question, and it links to Honourable Gigaba as well. 5 years ago, and I think I did report back to this committee previously, we saw the need to take our industry planners and our project developers out of our SBUs because they were just doing, I won't call them vanilla, we don't do vanilla transactions, but they were doing those type of transactions as opposed to what we wanted them to do, which was identifying what are the new opportunities, what are the catalytic projects. And that, we believe, has really worked for us. We've created a pipeline of projects which will be worth 69 billion when they graduate to investment. We'll share with you a report that we did around Sasol, because we also looked at this about 4 or 5 years ago, Chair, to say, what would it take to fund the next Sasol? And it makes for an interesting read, because it would mean IDC would be coming to this committee and saying, we're working on 2 projects in 1 province, 80% of our book is there, it's going to create very little jobs, and it's 80% impaired. So it's exactly what you're saying, is that, you know, the vehicle that we are as an institution now for those kind of strategic projects, what is the alignment with that? So that's why we created this division to look at industry planning and project development, to say what can we do as a catalytic investment, that role of being a catalytic investor to grow value chains. Gee, I've talked too much, I think. So I'm sorry?
You're right on time.
Yes, and there are a lot of other issues which were raised, which are really important. So yes.
Just a very small thing, if I may. Thank you very much for the responses. Just one key response that I haven't got yet is reporting on individual transactions.
Yeah.
Are we going to be able to see at a company level what those transactions look like in terms of investment and return?
You want me to answer that?
You start.
Yeah, no, we can definitely provide that to the committee. We can provide those reports. You can speak on behalf of the IDC.
So obviously we do keep that information. There's obviously, yes, confidentiality, it's competitive information as well.
Yeah.
But we do have, you know, we look at the value, performance, again, tracked on how we perform against our debt, and then looking at the fair values through our investments as well. So we constantly do that process, and we can provide some information on that.
Even if the confidential information is redacted?
Member Chance, let's avoid that. Let's let them answer, and then if there's anything, we'll please move towards conclusion.
Yes, Chairperson.
Thanks, Chair. I think just to start to say, in terms of the list, we will provide the list for that district. When we publish the integrated report, we'll publish the list of the name of projects and where they are, so that it then make it easy for members to visit. Just in terms of just to add on what the member Chance is asking, we normally have what we call the oath of secrecy, and when we deal with these companies, we agree in terms of what can be disclosed, what can't, and also lead to the issue of protection of IP. Most of the staff, they sign the oath of secrecy, the non-disclosure. So should we find that one of them has breached that, there are actions. So I think it will be useful that then you inform us. Just on also the other issue of the chair to say, we're saying high cost of capital. I think what we've seen is that with the collaboration that we have with the DFI, we have the MSEP program. It ranges from an interest of 0 to 2%. The reason for that is to make sure that when IDC and NEF are funding from their balance sheet, they have that portion of the DTIC to actually bring the cost of capital a bit low. So it's not that big, but it's been like working slowly. And then on how we measure impact, we've got what we have as guidelines for each incentives. So the incentives are normally reviewed every 3 years. And I think to Member Besta's point, so when we put an incentive, there's a particular objective that we set, then there's a criteria, there's actually some targets that you are meeting. So after 3 years, then we go back to the guidelines and review that. In most of them, we had to change because of, you find that it's going to another direction. Chair is right, we will come back with the Black Industrialist report just to show, because the Black Industrialist will start from 2016 to say these are the projects that have been approved, but then we also zoom in to say where are they now, because obviously that is very key, that whoever we supported, they are actually sustained. We know because of COVID, they actually fell off. The issue of collaboration with the banks, and I think I was hoping DG is going to touch on it. We went to all the banks to try and work with them. I guess we negotiated with almost all of them to say that you normally say you fund businesses, but how do we then join? Because the issue is that we don't see which businesses that you're funding. To your point, Chair, it's an area that we're still looking at. Yeah. It's not maturing as we want, because I don't think any of the fund did materialize because of their condition. Chair, the other issue is with regard to the collaboration with other entities, and I think maybe just for us to make sure, because I don't think we have that closer working relationship with NYDA than with the Department of Women. So mostly we work with them. It's something that we can actually sort of improve, just to make sure that we fund the same. Because I think the issue is that most of them, I've seen most of the projects, they would have gotten a smaller portion of funding from NYDA. That then comes in as sort of their own contribution. But to the magnitude of projects that they would be applying on, it then becomes a bit minimal. The other element is the metrics of performance that the Honourable Member asked to say. We are saying this will be the baseline. I guess now we look at this 5 years. Now we need to say the next 5 years, what is it that we want to see? And I think it will be in the next APP. The targets have changed drastically because of the issues that we are actually facing now. So what you will see is that they are actually much higher, because then it goes to the question of saying, where are we going to invest to be able to create more jobs and have that inclusive economic growth? Thanks, Chair.
Chair, conclusion. I just want to
see before you, the CEO wants to say something quickly. Let's allow you. Yes? Please switch on your mic because...
Yes. Yes, okay. There are 3 issues. On the tax exemption, it really is where we want to leverage funding from other institutions, and then how that funding is treated in our hands. It's often treated as attracting a tax because it's seen as income. So that's the issue we would be potentially wanting to solve for, but it does require additional work. It has been flagged by the department. Chair, just the two issues I think which on the sectors, the jobs created. So there are definitely big differentials between your capital intensive upstream industries where you might be trying to achieve particular strategic objectives to create jobs downstream. We wouldn't capture those downstream jobs in what we're reporting to you here. It's the direct jobs. And then also we wouldn't, where we've expanded a company and it didn't result in new jobs, that would be jobs neutral in terms of jobs created. So it's methodology and sectors. I did want to also speak to some of the disbursements Honourable Nkutu raised. So where we have approved funding, for example, to an AMSA to keep their Newcastle facility open, or to TCTA, or to Transnet, which are large facilities which we've approved, then that would obviously it's not black owned as well. So it wouldn't. So that also brings down that number. I'm not detracting from the fact that we do have targets, quite ambitious targets, to increase our funding to black-owned businesses, women and youth, which are available in our APP. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think we appreciate. I think this is a proper engagement, and I hope that some of the things that we've been drilling as a portfolio committee will will obviously be taking a very closer look into your new APP in terms of all the issues. We are concerned about the funding in the mining sector. You know, that 1% is extremely low. I think there's a lot we can do there. We're a mineral-rich country, so it's one area. And mining, manufacturing, and agriculture has always carried our economy. So it's one area that we really need to take a closer look at. And the second issue, Acting DG, I think the capitalization of the NEF is urgent. It's one area that we need to work, all of us, put our heads together. I had a small discussion with the acting interim of IDC. We really need to look into this matter and resolve it. I think there should be some way in which we can deal with it. We took a resolution at some point, and I think we must restate it, that we have an appetite. I think through our legal team, we will have to summon the banks and invite yourselves to engage on this thing, because it's a major problem, and they can't just, we have to look into some legislation that creates these banks. They can't just do as they wish. So we'll have to obviously look. I know there's about 26 or so banks, but we don't really need all of them. There's about 6 or 7 that are key. The teams will look into them, and then they will advise us here are the key players. Because in terms of the law of the Republic and our own rules here, we can't summon anybody to appear before the committee. So I think we'll summon the banks. We won't invite them. We will summon them to come. And then we'll want all our experts in the DFIs to then do a preparatory work in terms of all the issues that are of concern, so that we are then able to deal with the issues. Acting DG, I will send you the BRRR report, because it summarizes almost all the things we've been talking about over the past 6 months in our recommendations, which I think, on behalf of the committee, would like to express that that's our collective thoughts in terms of what we think could help us to move the DTIC and the economy forward. So those are the issues that we wanted to reflect before you. Would like to take this opportunity to thank you and the team, and we must continue engaging in the interest of building a very strong and resilient economy. The meeting is officially adjourned. I am requesting members of the committee to remain, and the colleagues there at the ICT to stop the recordings, because we're going to have like almost a very quick in-committee meeting. And I'm sure, colleagues, if you are still outside here, we can still interact. We're not in a rush. Our meeting is at 3 today, so we are still here, just a few minutes of the things that we just needed to pick up as a committee. I don't think it will be more than 10 minutes in case you want to interact with members of the committee. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.